It's about a kiss. You've got option 1, everything guaranteed, or option 2, the search for ever and ever and ever and ever in this short, very privileged life we have to go for that ultimate kiss.
De leiders en professionals van Nederland helpen nog beter te worden in hun werk. Dames en heren, dit is DenkTank, de podcast van Denk Producties. Mijn naam is Remy Gieling en naast mij zit co-host en oprichter van Denk Producties, Hans Jansen. Dag Hans.
Hallo, goeiedag.
Ja, dit keer nemen we niet op vanuit onze reguliere studio, maar zijn we op locatie bij een van de meest gerenommeerde fotografen ter wereld. De boeken Homage to Humanity en Before They Pass Away werden global bestsellers. De laatste verkocht meer dan 350.000 exemplaren. En zijn nieuwste boek, Between the Sea and the Sky, komt deze maand uit. Ik heb het natuurlijk over Jimmy Nelson. Jimmy, thank you so much for having us.
It's my pleasure. Great to have you here.
Your latest book will be published on September the 17th, 2 days before your keynote at the Future Focused Leadership Seminar in AFAS Live.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
It's a beautiful coincidence. It's going to be fun. And I think we were just discussing it a few minutes beforehand. I think it's going to be an extraordinary launch because we're going to do something historic, which I'm not going to, you say in Dutch, verklap, I'm not going to tell about. It's never been done before. And if it succeeds as I plan, I can share it on the day itself, on the 19th, with up-to-date content and exactly what happens.
Yes. He asked if he could change the order and the content of the presentation on Sunday evening, and we're open to that. So
it's a bit risky, but it'll make it exciting and fun, and it's always full of surprises.
For a cliffhanger.
Yeah, exactly.
Very excited. Hans, there are countless world-class speakers on stage during Future Focused Leadership. Amy Edmondson, Yuval Harari, Usain Bolt, you name it. Mm-hmm. What does the incredible story of Jimmy add to the mix?
Yes, well, of course, I'm always like in a scouting mode. When I go to like TEDx conferences or other events, I always try to see, who is really magnificent. And I still recall going to the first TEDx Amsterdam in the Stad Schouwburg, I think 2013.
It was 2013,
yeah. And I saw Jimmy speak, and also then Michele de Prins, who was a guest speaker at our Obama conference. Mm-hmm. So when I curate a conference, we always have people that are like, scientists or management experts. Mm-hmm. But I also want to add surprise speakers that have a story that may perhaps not be super expected in a leadership conference, but will be the thing people remember the most. And that's your role.
I think it's a nice coincidence. You met me or saw me or listened to me on that first presentation in the Concertgebouw here in Amsterdam in 2013. I'd never spoken in public prior to that day. It was a serious adventure, probably the ultimate adventure for me, because I was struggling, let's say, within my project, and I was at a dead end. I'd hit a wall. And I couldn't carry on further. And this has nothing to do with creativity. I will always be able to carry on further creatively. This was more in a business context, and I was stuck. And somebody advised me the only way to get out of this conundrum is to tell your story. And prior to that day, I'd never told any stories to anybody because I didn't think my story was valid. I seem to remember that day when I stood up on stage. I'd never felt more naked, more vulnerable in my whole life. And I seem to remember crying as well. I had tears in my eyes because that's how terrifying, but how vulnerable I became in the process of telling the story. But as a result, it was the catalyst of many appointments in between and where we're talking about today.
Yeah, and you even got invited to TEDx Global, right?
We went down to TEDx Global. That was phenomenal. That was in Brazil. I sort of took my kids to that and met a multitude of extraordinary human beings, was very humbled by the process, because then you really are standing on stage with speakers pur sang, but thrilling. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think many people know you from your previous books, Homage to Humanity and Before They Pass Away, with these beautiful pictures where you traveled the world. But then COVID hit and you weren't able to travel, of course.
Well, yeah, I got stuck. I was working in Mongolia at the time. It was March 2020. And I thought it was a bit of a joke. So I had an extended stay in Mongolia. Arrived back in Amsterdam and realized it wasn't a joke and it wasn't a very funny situation to be in. But interestingly, I'd managed to solve a large number of very serious issues just prior to the pandemic. So I looked around me, and unlike others who became understandably terrified, I was actually quite, if I'm allowed to say it, relaxed, because I'd just come out of a tunnel far longer than the pandemic tunnel was. So I was feeling rather optimistic. I was thinking, if I can survive that, I can survive anything. I was sitting here actually in the studio in Amsterdam South and realized that anything was possible. And that what I was looking for and it didn't have to be that far away. Cutting off around a big story and making it very short. And that I was looking for connection with others in the most beautiful way and imaginable. And maybe, and this has been a little bit wishy-washy, melodramatic, I was looking to be loved and give love. And I think for the majority of my life, I was running away from that concept because of a few childhood experiences. And I realized as the sun was shining here on the terrace that there was love to be given and found even on my own doorstep here in the Netherlands. I use the camera, as I have done ever since the beginning, as a medium, as a metaphor. It's not so much about the pictures, but it's an excuse to get as close as possible to people. And that's what evolved into the Dutch project, Between the Sea and the Sky.
Yes. But just to take it one step back also, I mean, for people who don't know your work, what you do as a photographer, you try to connect to indigenous cultures all over the planet. Mm-hmm. Some of them haven't even seen people from outside their tribe before. And it is your challenge to try to make the best possible picture with them.
It is, but again, it's not about the picture. It's about the process. Yeah. I grew up in the indigenous world as a child. My father was a geologist. At the age of 7, till the age of 17, I was sent to an English boarding school, 1,000 boys, all male, and 400 Catholic Jesuit priests. And as a result of that, there was some serious abuse. And that sort of destroyed an optimism, a childish, unending horizon of how I'd been perceiving the world until that date. I essentially, using a contemporary term, went into lockdown for the better part of 10 years, dealing with what we had experienced with these priests, and realized the only way to perhaps solve it was to go back into the world to reform a new connection, ultimately with myself. Because the way I looked, I'd lost my hair, the way I felt, I'd lost my soul and my dignity. I didn't like any of it. And so I couldn't persuade myself that when I looked in the mirror, I was valid. I had to go and find other people to persuade me of that. And I decided organically, I was a kid, I was 17, to go into the world as far away from a world that I understood, perhaps to a world where I felt comfortable. And that was essentially sort of off the grid. And laying your soul bare in front of human beings that have very little beoordeling and Dutch judgment as we perceive it is an extraordinary process. You have to go very far. You have to be willing to strip yourself down right to your bare soul. But as I had nothing to lose anymore, it was a process that managed to manifest itself into an extraordinary journey. The camera is the medium I take to perhaps validate that journey and create, if I can, or I aspire, the ultimate image, the ultimate photograph, to be a mirror, to perhaps one day hang and to look at it myself and say, perhaps I can feel as proud, as beautiful, as honorable, as extraordinary as the human being I've connected with.
Yeah, so you don't see it as an assignment as a photographer, but you see it as something that may happen when you are connecting to these people and really trying to...
The journey itself is the thrill. I'm often asked, but what if it doesn't happen the way you want it to? It's about ingredients. It's about knowing that on this journey, at this destination, you will come across a number of experiences. What form it will take, how it will align, you have no idea, but that's the thrill. And often it's something very unexpected.
When did you find out that the camera was your medium to make that connection between...
Not around 2013, because I was being seriously challenged for reasons I'm not going to get into now as to the validity of the pictures that I was taking. And when I stood on the stage, when you first saw me, I had to tell a story about how much it mattered to me. But it wasn't the taking the picture that mattered to me. It was being in intimate, trusting contact with other human beings. That's what mattered. And that the only way I could carry on with the project that I was working was to share that story and explain why it mattered so much to me. So it has nothing to do with anthropology. It has nothing to do with journalism. It has nothing to do directly with photography, but I'm sort of perhaps making an art, a document to express my feelings and to hope that it becomes a mirror for without being too evangelical, humanity. To perceive one another in a different way, to look beyond that judgment and to go further. Yeah.
So you travel around the world, you try to connect to these cultures. I can imagine that it's going to be like a blank canvas. You're on a trip and you don't know what you end up with.
The trip is there's a very beautiful analogy, a little bit of a story. I use very large analog 10x8 cameras. There's one behind us, which you can't see. It's plate cameras. You put a hood over your head. It's not that you're hiding, but you're using this analog sheet film. On an average journey, I only have 10 sheets with me. So it's 10 moments to connect, 10 pictures. But
you can't get any new ones.
A journey could be 1.5 to anything up to 2 months. And I was giving a talk, not too dissimilar to what I'll be giving on the 19th, but to a group of teenagers. Not so long ago. And they looked at me with these big, bored eyes at the time, saying, why do you make your life so difficult for yourself with this stupid old camera with the hood over your head? Times have moved on, Mr. Nelson. And said, it's okay, you can call me Jimmy. I said, well, how have they moved on? Well, we all now use digital, ha ha ha. So you've got a couple of thousand teenagers laughing very cynically to this sort of middle-aged man on the stage. And one of the guys held up his smartphone and waved it to me and at the audience. And he said, with this, you can spray and pray. I said, well, spray and pray. You just put your finger on the button and it records everything. In actual fact, you can maybe even do it remotely, even perhaps with a drone. You don't have to apply yourself to it. It records everything. Have you not considered taking this technology with you on your journey? And then there was a pause and I realized there was no way I was going to be able to explain to this audience about analog and digital. So I made a segue and I said, right, it's about a feeling. It's about an emotion. They still looking at me a bit blank. And then I asked the kid who had his telephone in the air, and I said, what do you want to feel tomorrow? There must be something that really matters to you. And he looked a bit vague, and then his cheeks started to go red, and a few people started to snigger around him. And he said, perhaps there is something. I said, well, I know what it is, but you've got to tell me. So he stood up and said, there's a girl I want to kiss. So a couple of thousand kids burst out laughing. But we have a conversation. Everybody puts their smartphones down. Everybody's eyes go white and everybody lights up. We're going to talk about kissing / connection. But connection, that matters to 16-year-olds, not to 50-year-olds using analog cameras. So I turned back to this guy and said, right, I'm going to give you two options to go on that journey for a kiss. The first option is your option, the one you know all about. It's the spray and pray option. Tomorrow when you go onto the school square at break, everybody will be standing there waiting for you and everybody will say yes. You don't even have to ask. You don't have to flirt. You don't have to invest. It's just one guaranteed kiss all day, all along with everybody. So 2,000 teenagers screaming and yelling, option one, option one, option one. And so, well, there is the second version is, now it's about a kiss, but it's about a kiss that's not guaranteed, I'm afraid. And it's about one kiss. But let's say for the sake of argument, I'm going to give you the kiss. Not me personally, but you'll get the one kiss, but it's just one kiss. But that kiss will last a second, maybe two. It'll last on the last second of the last minute of the last hour of the last day of the last week after about 2.5 months wait. So you've got option one, everything guaranteed, or option two, one kiss, but you have to wait 2.5 months for. Which do you go for? All of them screaming unanimously, option one, the easy option. And then there's silence and they look at me and unexpectedly hoping that I would follow them into option one. I said, no, I'm with option two because I'm not interested in the kiss. There's a bit of a blank stare. It's not about the kiss because that's never ultimately going to happen. It's about the journey. It's about the unending seduction, the unending flirt, the failure, this discovery, the adventure, the search forever and ever and ever and ever in this short, very privileged life we have to go for that ultimate kiss. I don't believe I will ever make the ultimate picture. I aspire to. I put everything, every form of emotion that you could ever imagine into the pot on that journey. But I now understand it will never really happen. But that's the biggest secret. I don't want it to happen because that journey then has to stop. And that's being in the flow.
Yeah.
And that's absolute heaven. So every journey you go on, you aspire for the definitive synthesis of aesthetics. And you get closer and you get closer and you get closer, but it's not the kiss you're looking for. So the journey keeps going and going and you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject. And hopefully deeper into understanding of self. And then one day, to swing the story right back to the beginning, you dare to stand in the mirror after all these years, look at the person you see being me and saying you're okay. I accept you for you are in all your scars and fallibilities and failings and a few abilities. And that's fine. And this is beautiful. And I will look after you. And for the few years that we're still given to carry on, I'll do my best to honor it. And then running parallel to it, maybe leave a little bit of a legacy to inspire other people to realign how they see themselves and ultimately others. And that's all 8.5 billion of us living on this tiny little spaceship whizzing through the galaxy. And until we redefine and re-love one another, and it's a little bit evangelical, I think we have potentially serious problems. So that's sort of the journey in a nutshell over the last 54 years, this journey of rediscovery of self, getting a little bit to grips with what that could mean and perhaps trying to inspire others. But you don't have to run around with an analog camera.
No.
But to make the leap from your previous projects, which took you all over the world, to your latest books, which comes out on September 17th. We got a sneak peek. It looks truly amazing. You
Between
worked
the sea and the sky.
You worked on it for 2 years, I think, right?
Yeah.
In what way was it differently than your previous projects?
I think I'll have to be honest. I have a little bit of notoriety in the Netherlands. So a few people know what I'm doing. So the mention of my name through my colleagues does help. The realization that I've been living in the Netherlands for 30 years. I call myself Dutch. I have Dutch administration, Dutch passport. When I'm abroad, I speak Dutch. I deny having any association with the United Kingdom. When I'm here, as my kids often say, Dad, you don't speak Dutch, you speak Dinglish. But that's another story. I realized that I had to invest probably more here than I would do on the other side of the world, because there's much more judgment here. Yeah. There's much more preconceived ideas of who I am, who I'm not, and also vice versa. So the work was as hard, if not harder. It was less of a physical adventure, but more of an emotional and a psychological investment. So it took 2.5 years to gain the trust and the contact and the respect from these communities, who many of them don't live more than 20 minutes or half an hour from Amsterdam, to have the intimacy, the time, the focus to indulge in this search for the one kiss. Yeah.
What was the most challenging photo?
The most challenging photo, I think the most challenging photo was the disappointment that I found out only a few weeks ago. In one of the villages called Maakte, there was a drieling, a triplet. And they are three young ladies who were not available when I was making the book because they're terribly busy, because they're 22-year-olds. And then they'd heard how beautiful the book had become, and they now wanted to participate in the book. So too late to be in the book, but I did go and spend the day with them taking their photograph. And I think the most challenging is the realization that you're never finished. As soon as you open one door, more doors open, and you have to sort of draw a line underneath it, but it's ever evolving and ever ending. And then the thrill is on the 17th is that we're going to be having, if it all goes to plan, more than 700 participants who are in the book dressed in traditional dress coming to Amsterdam, standing formally in front of the Rijksmuseum, the National Museum, and we'll be making a sort of a staatsfoto of them there and giving each one of them individually a copy of the book.
Yeah. So you have in this new book, you have people in like Dutch klederdracht, or what's the English word?
Traditional clothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you traveled all around the country, visiting people, wearing those clothes, hearing their stories.
Yeah.
Did you see one country, or did you see how many variations and colors did you?
There are 20 chapters, so each one is more varied than the other. Many of the local communities have actually local languages and local dialects. I'd say 50% of the communities are regularly wearing the klederdracht, weekly, in some cases daily. 50% of them is more ceremonial or theatrical. That's where the difference lies. The majority of the wealth in the clothing tends to be by the coast, where there was trade in the past. And it's extraordinarily diverse for such a small country, which I found shocking, extraordinarily shocking. And the fact that the people I'm showing it to, native Dutch, are very unfamiliar with the diversity and the wealth of what it is. So it's not an anthropological study. I haven't counted how many buttons. It's a love story It's a gratitude towards the Netherlands for giving me a place to feel safe and at home as a base for my travels around the world. And thanks to the pandemic, having the opportunity to indulge in it and put it on paper and to share it and re-show it to the Dutch nation in a way of dignity and respect and beauty, in very much alignment to all the work I've done up until to date. And the hope is that the amount of people that are enthusiastic about my work so far, that they can see themselves within the same light, within the same aesthetic. So it's more visual poetry than journalism or counting numbers or buttons.
Yeah, it's more homage again.
Totally,
right? Yes.
Totally. It's an ode, and but it's also a thank to the Netherlands, because in actual fact, I'm very happy here. And I think that's the journey we're also on, the multitude of journeys, looking for a place to feel safe, at home, seen, acknowledged. And after all these weird and wonderful years that I've been blessed to live, I'm accepted here, I'm seen for the little work that I do, perhaps acknowledged, and that makes me actually very happy. So I want to reinvest in a reciprocal kind of way and give back. Yeah.
The one thing I don't think many listeners will realize right away is what an enormous investment such a project is, because you've been working on it for 2 years, not only yourself, but with your team.
Team of 6 to 7 people, a multitude of freelancers. Yeah.
Of course, you have to edit all the photos.
But the edit, that's very easy. On the naming, the business is complicated because I'm not a business person. I'm, for want of a better word, an artist. It is, how do you manifest a project like this? There's no funding, there's no stichting, there's no grant. It's a pure business, but at the same time, I'm monetizing somebody else's identity, somebody else's culture. How do you make sure that remains reciprocal? It's a massive investment, but we also have to reinvest in the subjects that we were using all the work with. So it's highly complicated, but I quite like that complexity. I think when you're trying to raise the imagery and put it on a podium in a way that's never been done before, there are many more multitude of layers behind it. But I'm not just a photographer. I use a camera and a multitude of other mediums to try and communicate a story.
And you also do it through your foundation. I mean, you're not the photographer, and if a book does well, you bring back...
Well, again, I'm appalling with numbers, but a large percentage of the income is reinvested in the foundation. In the case of the Dutch project, every single person who participates will get a book. We'll be reinvesting in the communities by giving back art. And we have this very large digital exhibition opening in Amsterdam in October in the Fabriek de Lumière, for a number of months, and we're trying to get access for kids for free, sort of kids from school. So it's this unending process. So I'm using the subjects to redefine how I see myself and them. If money is being made, it has to sustain this business, but at the same time be reinvested in the great story. And we also do that globally with all the communities I've worked with over the last 10 to 15 years. We're investing them individually. Yeah. And it's all about sustaining of their culture and their identity. It's not about building schools or houses or digging water wells. It's trying to persuade them the validity of their authenticity and how important it is to take it into the future as we enter this sort of extraordinary sort of opportunities of metaverse, etc., etc.
Yeah.
On the 19th, you will be giving a keynote next to, I think, Amy Edmondson and
Alex Osterwalder.
Yeah. You will also be signing your books.
Yeah.
Your most recent endeavor, but also your earlier
just been
books.
Out 2 days. Yeah.
Still be warm. Yeah.
What will be the key takeaway from your talk?
There are 2 messages. One is, I'm not, for want of a better word, a traditional keynote speaker. I won't have any bar charts. I won't give any advice to businesses. I'm an appalling businessman. What I will invest as best as I can in those 20 minutes is the same emotion I put on the stage unintentionally in 2013. Make myself as vulnerable as possible and take that audience with me for 20 minutes and show me how important that is to redefine how you understand yourself and others by connecting. And as opposed to me standing on a stage, banging on my chest saying, look at me, look how important I am, actually take myself off the stage, putting myself metaphorically in the audience and stripping myself and my soul bare to show the audience that we are all the same. Yeah. That's what I will aspire to do in 20 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. The reason why Jimmy is on that stage is everybody has been talking about connective leadership. You know, leaders need to connect to the people who are who don't have the same bonding anymore than before Corona, and I think you are like the world champion in connecting, even if you didn't know. But I thought this story really brings a very fresh and very unexpected angle towards this very common problem for leaders.
It's extremely sweet. You say, world champion, I'm anything but that. But by default, through experiences from childhood, I've evolved into a way of communicating or enabling myself to communicate with others. And the picture is just the end process. But you have to take the audience with you, explain how that is. It's not a trick. It's not something that just sort of happens. It's something you evolve into that unending journey, which is that stupid or childish metaphor of the kiss on the school square. The realization that the ultimate connection is unending, but you have to continually keep investing in it very, very, very deeply. And if it's just a means to an end, it's going to stop one day. And I think if you put that in a business context, if we're all just commodities, then we may as well draw under a line underneath it all now. If we love and are thrilled to be human beings, and we genuinely are, and to work and interact with others, then it can become an extraordinary, sustainable process.
I saw you speak, I think 9 years ago. It's my quite certain guess that people will see you will remember the talk in 2031, 9 years from now. So I really look forward to that.
I do too.
That's the intention. But and I'm really looking, thank you for the invitation. It'll be very exciting. As I said, it's always a challenge to sort of communicate 54 years in 20 minutes, but I'm sure it'll be possible. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us here in your wonderful office.
My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Ja, Hans, we hadden het er even over. Inderdaad, 19 september is het evenement. Er zijn nog kaarten beschikbaar. Dus wil je komen luisteren naar Jimmy, maar ook naar Deborah Nas, Boyan Slat, the list goes on and on.
I think just to interrupt for the listeners, when you talk about sort of extraordinary speakers, you have a list that I'm extremely humbled to be part of. So I'll sort of crawl in behind and wait at the end, but some extraordinary people come to speak.
Yes, it's going to be really great.
Dankjewel voor het luisteren naar een nieuwe aflevering van DenkTank, de podcast van Denk Producties. Wil je meer lessen van de beste sprekers en leiders uit binnen- en buitenland? Vergeet je dan niet te abonneren via je favoriete podcastplatform. Mijn naam is Remy Gieling.
En ik ben Hans.
Ja. En heel graag tot de volgende keer.